What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so we are picking up with The Batman Who Laughs, which is a mini-series that's being written right now. Originally, I thought it was an ongoing series, but it's a mini-series. I don't really know how you make an ongoing series out of The Batman Who Laughs. And, a character like him could only ever really be like a mini or a maxi-series, like 6 or 12 issues long. But this is a monthly series, which means that we have December, and then January, February, March, April, and May is when it concludes, assuming that they stick with a 6-issue format and there's no delays. Having said that, this character was crazy popular. And I knew, like, as soon as Batman Who Laughs dropped, like, as soon as Dark Knight's Metal happened, and it was a version of Batman who became the Joker, like, I knew it was only ever a matter of time before we got a miniseries or something like that, because people loved it. Like, I mean, you guys loved the idea of the Batman Who Laughs. You guys are just like, dude, this is amazing. But the other cool thing about this is that this is kind of like a return to form for Scott Snyder when it comes to Batman. Not to say his Justice League is bad or anything. I love his Justice League. I love the work that he's been doing so far. But to me, Scott Snyder is best when he's on Batman because he just writes the character so well. And so what this does is this initially picks up with a handful of guys who are basically smuggling things out of Gotham. Now, this is the way Scott Snyder writes Batman. For those of you guys who read his New 52 run, so Court of Owls, Night of Owls, Death of the Family, and Endgame, that a lot of it's just kind of like Batman being a detective while being a hero at the same time and kind of explaining to you what's happening as it's going on. And what we end up learning here is that among the various schemes that different criminals have in Gotham City, that one of them involves smuggling things out of town and into other cities by way of using what are basically transport trucks. These giant flatbeds are designed for the purpose of moving houses. And we have these old, houses that are being moved out of Gotham City in order to build condos. But what's been going on here is that inside these flatbed trucks are like these small little segments, these small little compartments that can be used to house contraband. And no one's the wiser because as far as any cop looking at them is concerned, they're just moving houses out. They're just removing houses to make way for condos. And that's really the end of that. But where Batman kind of shows up here, it's really kind of Batman par for the course, which is to say him going through and tracking these guys down, talking to Alfred on the other end and locating, what's inside these compartments, what's basically here. Now, where Batman takes these guys out almost right off the bat, he in turn analyzes the compartment, figures out where it's at, and then basically cracks it open. And when he does, there's basically a kind of stasis pod of sorts. And inside this pod, this casket is basically a version of himself. And that's when things really begin to pop off. And that's when it gets cool, when you start to get into the introspective stuff, because that's what Snyder does, right? Like Snyder's like, okay, so business as usual until it's not, until like things pop off and it starts to go crazy. And then you kind of have to figure out what in the world is going on. And so what ends up happening here is where he basically dresses up as like a morgue guy and then going through and analyzing his own body, Batman almost kind of has a little bit of a crisis of self here, right? Like he looks at this whole thing and he says, okay, so this is basically me. And Alfred has the hardest time grasping this because remember, Alfred is looking at all this through the camera provided by Batman on his own body. And so it's not like Alfred can see Bruce Wayne and then the version of himself on the table. For Alfred, he's looking at Bruce Wayne on the table. And not only that, where they start going through and they start looking at this version of Bruce Wayne, they start seeing things where he's basically the opposite of the main DC Universe Bruce, the opposite of Bruce Wayne from Rebirth, in the sense that this version of Bruce, he had a happy life. And in a lot of ways, it almost kind of seems to be the life that Bruce Wayne envies. This version of Bruce Wayne had wrinkles on his eyes, which indicated laughter. He had a ring on his finger. He was married to Selina Kyle. He has a tattoo called May. That's the name that Bruce would have chosen had he and Selina Kyle got married and had a child. This is one of those things where you look at that and you say, this Bruce came from a perfect life, basically. He had the perfect life. That's somewhere along the line that he has all the same scars as the DC Rebirth Bruce Wayne, up to the point when he basically had his back broken by Bane. And that seems to be the change in status quo, right? Like in the main DC universe, Bruce Wayne fought against Bane, right? Like, Bane was this guy from Santa Prisca prison, and he figured out Bruce Wayne's identity as Batman in like 3 months and basically instituted this kind of guerrilla warfare campaign. And that's when he basically broke the back of Batman. And when he did, it was expected that Batman would be out of commission. Instead, Batman eventually took time to recover, and he ultimately went back to being Batman again. In this alternate reality, that doesn't seem to have been the case. That Bruce's back was broken by Bane, and then he just never went back to being Batman. He stayed as a person who was essentially hands-off, which kind of begs the question, what happened to Jean-Paul Valley? Because in the time when Bruce Wayne's back was broken and the time he came back to being Batman, Jean-Paul Valley took up the mantle for himself. But, this version of Bruce from this alternate reality seems to have taken up more of a humanitarian role. He worked on civil projects, different things like that. So he accepted his fate with his back broken and just kind of went forward accordingly. Somebody somewhere had basically killed him, and we don't know who it was. And so again, it's kind of crazy because this is the life that Bruce always wanted, the life he never got, and to see it on the face of someone basically meant that the life he had was essentially taken away. In a lot of ways, it's a personal loss here. He found tried and true happiness and it was yanked away. Why? Like, that's the question that he wants the answer to. And so from here, we switch over to Arkham Asylum, and we have a couple guards running through, and then we have Batman who basically appears here. And it's kind of funny because in this initial conversation between Bruce and Alfred, Bruce says, you know where we have to go. We have to go see him. And so then we switch back over to Arkham, and then we essentially have like Batman go on a warpath and start killing all these guards. He's decked in guns. He's got all kinds of arms and armament. The guy is loaded for bear. And this is something that we don't normally see. Like, you never see Batman really use guns. You do like once in a blue moon, but aside from the 1940s, late 1930s, early 1940s, during the golden age when Batman did actually kill people, they're usually used more for like fear tactics. It's to show how extreme Batman is at the time, as opposed to the fact that he would actually use it on a person. But going through and killing every last one of these guards, these guys are innocents. You know, these guys are not people who are inherently vindictive. Like, they're not people who are bad people. They're people with their own lives, their own families, so on and so forth. So this is a merciless version of Batman. He kills a member of his own rogues gallery. He's going through and it's literally a one-man army. From there, he basically breaks into one of the cells and frees the Joker, or at least it seems like he's freeing the Joker. Now, it's kind of interesting because from the Joker's perspective, it really is the arrival of Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne snapped, right? And as we know from the Killing Joke, it's like the one thing the Joker always wanted, to show Batman that all it takes is one bad day to essentially kind of snap, to break, and to become some sort of villain. And that's the Joker's mantra. But on the other side of that coin, it's the thing the Joker doesn't want the most, that the Joker needs Batman. He has to have him there. Without Batman, Joker's incomplete. He has no real purpose. Batman is the yin to Joker's yang. And so where he kind of taunts him for a second, or at least talks to him and says, you know, are you here to kill me? You know, he simply just says no. And instead, the Batman who laughs shows up. And it's just like, wow, dude, as soon as I saw this, I was like, holy cow. You know, and it's crazy because Joker starts begging for his life. And that's very uncharacteristic of the Joker, right? Like, the Joker never begs for his life. The Joker would just start laughing maniacally, you know, because, well, this is the end of the Joker. This is how it ends. Almost as if it was kind of like some ironic sad tale that the Joker always imagined that Batman would be the one to kill him. And instead, it ends up being the Batman who laughs. And that's one thing to bear in mind, is that the Joker knows who the Batman who laughs is. He knows who he's about. But before he even has a chance to respond, the Batman who laughs smashes him in the head with a hatchet and kills the Joker. And it's just like, wow. And so switching over to Batman basically following up on the death of the Joker, this is when we end up learning it wasn't actually the Joker. Now, in reality, this is an important thing. In reality, if you're new to comic books, this would seem like, well, that's dumb. But in truth, like, this is the nature of the Joker, right? Like, this is not something Scott Snyder's pulling out of his backside. He's not taking the cheap way out. That the Joker, if he senses that his end is coming, if he senses that anybody besides Batman is going to kill him, what he'll do is he'll take one of his dummies and he'll switch them out. We've seen him do that multiple times over the years. So again, that's par for the course. It's like the coin of Two-Face. It's like the gun of Victor Freeze. It's just part of the Joker's character. It's part of what he does. So that's a very important thing to understand, because it'll shift your perspective on why this happened and why it played out the way it did. Again, it's not Scott Snyder taking the easy way out. It's just the nature of what the Joker does constantly. And so where Batman ends up traveling back to the Batcave, what he ends up doing here is basically speaking with Alfred and saying, you need to open the door to the waterway. And when Alfred's response is one of protest, Batman's response is, you have to do this. And that's when we end up realizing that inside the waterway is the actual Joker himself. Now, there's a reason why this happens. So we need to kind of jump all the way back to the New 52, really going forward from like Death of the Family to Endgame. And the reason why is because when it comes to Scott Snyder's storytelling of Batman, it all feeds in, right? Like, Scott Snyder kind of goes on the assumption that you're familiar with his Batman story, his Batman run at the start of New 52, in order to understand what's going on now. So to kind of explain that, when the New 52 first kicked off, there was a single issue, like an annual or like a special or something like that from Detective Comics that featured the Joker, and then we didn't hear from him for like 2 years. And it wasn't until Death of the Family, when the Joker returns, that you basically end up realizing the Joker's been doing a lot of things behind the scenes. The Joker's been removing his face, and he basically has it kind of sewn back on again. He institutes like the systematic destruction of the Batman family. He goes through and he wages kind of a one-man war against Batman, which culminates in Endgame. You learn things like the Joker is essentially immortal by consuming Dionysium, different things like that. But one of the things that Snyder establishes is that in the early days of Bruce's career as Batman, between the time when he was full-on Batman and the time that the Batcave was formed, that what had happened was he had basically faced off against the Joker. You know, things had kind of gone awry. The Joker seemed to have been defeated, but the Joker had basically stowed away and followed Batman to the Batcave and figured out where Batman resided. And so again, it was kind of interesting because that fed into Death of the Family. When the Bat family realizes this, they realize the Jokers always know where they operated out of, and at any point in time, their identities could have been leaked. At any point in time, their personal lives could have been destroyed, and Batman didn't tell anyone. It was a betrayal of the Bat family. It was like the big betrayal that Batman hid the fact that the Joker knows where the Batcave is. And so that's why this is significant here, is because it's like the common meeting ground. It's the one place Batman would expect the Joker to show up if the Joker believed his life was in danger and the Joker was looking for some measure of safe haven. And that's what Batman tells him, you're safe here. And the Joker says, I don't want to be safe. Pulls a gun on Batman and hits Joker in the heart. And that's exactly what the Joker was aiming for. And what ends up happening here is the worst fear of Batman, exactly as it played out with the Batman Who Laughs. That with the Joker dying, the toxin in his chest begins to leak out to infect the next person that killed him, to turn them into the Joker. And when that happens, it infects Batman. And when it infects Batman, he turns into the Batman Who Laughs. And when the question's asked, why did Joker do this? The Joker said, because you can't stop him unless you become him. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.